So in this week's episode of Make It with Calvin, I'm going to show you guys how I took a logo along with the file and made an awesome coin out of it in copper. So let's talk about it. So first of all, credit partly for this project goes to Jimmy over at Jimmy Shaw's Tidbits. You might know him from the Calvin and Jimmy show, and Chris over at Practical Printing, who created the logo for Jimmy as part of a logo design competition Jimmy was holding. And as part of the competition, I had said that if the model file happened to be machinable, I would come along and machine that file into a piece of material and give one coin to the winner of the competition and one to Jimmy, so he'd have something to rock around with, you know, on live stream. He can like have this thing hanging around his neck and be like super cool, and you know, I'm just kidding on that part. Now, jokes aside, what I did for the project is, upon winning the competition, I asked Chris over at Practical Printing, I'm like, hey, it's possible to have the original Fusion 360 file that you used so I can go in and machine from it, and Chris, knowing me, was more than happy to oblige with that and sent me over the model file. Now, the only problem I had initially is when he designed the file, it would probably have been about this big around as designed, which was a little bit on the big side for machining it, as all I happened to have was some 2-inch copper bar lying around. Didn't have anything that big, and my mill can't go that big either. So after scaling the file down to a size that fit onto my copper, I ran into a big problem, and that is the text on here, as you can probably tell, is pretty darn tiny. Now, this created a unique challenge, mostly because really tiny tooling is extremely delicate. It needs to be run at very high RPMs, and it is a very accurate machine. My CNC machine does not have those three things going for it. It's not very fast, not very accurate, and it just would take forever as well. So that being said, I came up with somewhat of a unique strategy to machining the coin, which I know is not the world's most efficient method, but I'll explain why I did it in just a second. So to machine the coin, one other thing that made it a little bit tricky is the capital letters and the lowercase letters are at a different height. The megaphone body and the 3 bars coming out of the megaphone are also at different heights. So this created a little bit of a challenge instantly, because now the machine, instead of just creating one flat plane and cutting all the material around it, now has to deal with multiple steps. Now, this is not very hard to deal with, but it definitely created a little bit of a challenge, but it also gave me an opportunity to try out a new method of doing things. So instead of just using a flat tool to come along and just create the different heights, I ended up using a ball end mill, which has a half circle on the bottom, and use that in 3 different sizes to make the coin. So what I did initially was come in with an 1/8 inch Destiny Tool 2-flute Viper and just hog the copper out of there. I took a very wide step over an extremely aggressive path, and I left behind a very rough surface, but that was perfectly fine. The whole idea was I wanted a big tool within reason to go in there and just clear as much copper as humanly possible as fast as possible. Whenever possible, use the largest possible tool to clear material when reasonably practical, or use a series of tools stepping down, so that way one small tool is not removing a ton of material. You gotta remember, tiny tooling, even in a good machine, has a finite life. As it starts to dull a little bit, the cutting load will go up and tool's done. So with all that aside, I then came along with a 1/16 inch end mill and did what I would call a semi-finishing pass. Now what this did is it ran back and forth at a much smaller step over and created all the height changes on the coin and left the overall surface finish, which I understand there is a little bit of a line texture left behind. I understand some people might not like that. Personally, it didn't bother me, and as it was, the machining time was pushing almost an hour just to do the 1/16 inch ball mill back and forth, so I didn't want to push it any farther. Then, when that was done, around the lettering were some very tiny areas that just were not going to get cleaned up. So then what I did is I came along with a contour toolpath in Fusion 360 and literally just traced out around everything, all the letters, the megaphone, everything like that. And my height setting might not have been perfect on my machine, partly because the fact that it is only so accurate, but I was able to come down with that really tiny tool and just carefully remove all the material from around the lettering. That meant that the tool didn't have to do very much cutting, and I was able to get the desired result in a relatively faster time. Now let's say I did have a machine that had a very fast spindle, very precise. Even then, I probably would not have used a 1/32 inch tool to finish the whole thing unless I really had to, mostly just because 1/32 inch tools are very weak, and especially in a gummy material like copper, if it starts to dull, it's dead. So to finish the coin up was pretty simple. I just threw it into my rock tumbler with some green ceramic media, let it tumble for about 2 days straight just to knock down any burrs, smooth the surface down. Then I threw it into my tumbler with some stainless steel pins, let that run for about a day, and then threw it into my giant vibratory tumbler for a couple of hours with some corn cob and walnut and red rouge and new finish mixed in there, and got this. Yes, it has tarnished a little bit. I believe that is because this did get exposed to some salt air. When I showed it off to Jimmy at the air show that we had in San Francisco, we were right next to the Golden Gate Bridge, so obviously it was going to be a bit damp, but it still looks really cool, and personally almost adds a cool aged look to it. So I hope you guys enjoyed this episode and showing how I made these custom coins. If you guys are interested in having a custom coin made of your channel logo, please reach out to me. I will be basing pricing on these on the difficulty of your coin to work with, and I will need preferably a Fusion 360 file or a .igis file, as those allow me to just directly import them into Fusion and go ahead and machine everything out from there. So hope you guys enjoyed this, and I'll see you here next time on Make It with Calvin.